Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of The Lincoln Lawyer. Great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're picking up where the previous episode left off with the mysterious Mr. Sweeney, McSweeney, I think his name, juror number 7, trying to kill Mickey. Luckily, Mickey ain't just a regular lawyer. He's fighting for his life, understandably, but I was kind of surprised Mickey can hold himself so well in a fight, but he does. I mean, granted, luckily it all works out because Griggs showed up in time, but, Mickey accidentally kicked McSweeney off of him. McSweeney fell over the edge and died, so... But the reason why I was like, did he set this up from the beginning? It's like, no, Griggs had people following him because he knew Mickey wasn't telling him everything. So he's like, I know you knew something more. So even though you said this had nothing to do with a bribe, so you're like, oh, I could pull back on the SIS stuff. But he's like, I knew you knew more. And obviously he was right. But so McSweeney isn't the end of all this. Like, he's just a hired gun. Someone else hired him. So the question then becomes, well, who did? The first person on the list becomes Trevor. Because you start thinking, like, well, why would he want to? And it's like, well, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It's like, at the end of the day, Trevor got all he wanted, but Mickey did point out, like, I do know the truth about your situation, so I know the truth about, like, what you did, and once again, he can't be tried for again, but at the very least, he could be exposed that, like, right, Laura's the one behind everything, so he wanted me to be, he was like, no, like, I really appreciate the work you did, so it doesn't really matter to me, so I was like, okay. And part of me was like, man, it sucks. Like, because once again, there's nothing they can necessarily get him on related to Laura. I was like, I don't know if there's anything tangentially that could make him go down for a long time because of that. But life gets him back as Carol is the one that pops him. I was wondering if the person that was behind all this that, was helping him in the long run because he doesn't know who it is, I thought they would end up killing him. But in fact, Carol's the one that killed him. Because we never really found out everything, but once again, Lorna kept being like, there's something with this lady. I don't know what. So I don't know whether it's a situation. It had to be a thing of just, once again, she was severely in love with Jan. Very much with all the lies that Trevor kept saying, like, oh, I would have taken Laura back, even when she had cheated on me. I think the same thing kind of applies with Carol, that despite all the women Jan was with, that she would have wanted to, she loved him. And it's like, right, you don't get to just get away with what you did. And Griggs calls that, like, there's a term for it, when someone kind of gets off for them doing something, and that the, universe has a way of getting them back. It's called a brass verdict. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, wow, despite all your machinations, you died. It's very poetic that, also, it's like, how do you die? Gunshot wound, obviously. But it's like, yeah, and you died before you even got everything. You did all this to protect your legacy, to protect yourself, and it all meant nothing in the end. So, poetic justice. Sadly, as Mickey says later on, client privilege still exists even after your client dies. Which, like, I think there's wiggle room around that, but it's very, like, tight living, not the easiest thing. So it's still, so the world will never really know. They'll still mourn him as like, oh my God, he was someone that was found not guilty. But even what Lorna said, like, was it last episode or, yeah, I want to say it was episode 9 where she said, yeah, even if you are found not guilty or not guilty, people are always going to think you did it regardless, right? So there are going to be people who are like, yeah, he kind of got it with his deserve. Did he get away with murder? And obviously he did, but not fully because he ended up getting capped himself. Part of me was wondering, would Mickey ever represent her in the future? But I don't know if he necessarily could, because I don't know if that'd be a conflict of interest. Would he even take that case? I don't know. I'd be curious to see if they did anything with that in the future or not, but maybe not. There's a part of me that's also wondering, because Lorna kind of got closer and connected with her to some extent, even their last conversation being, I hope whatever the verdict may be, whatever happens with Trevor, I hope you get some peace from this. And sadly, she couldn't find any peace. Now he's dead. Maybe she can, but I don't know. I don't know if, like, Lorna, jumping ahead a little bit, she's going back to law school. So I'm curious, will she end up taking her case later on? Will she convince Mickey to take Carol's case? Or at least, maybe like get her sentence reduced and make it not like premeditated, that it was, you know, kind of a crime of passion to some extent. Maybe that's what they could like shift it to, or make it as like, right, a lapse in judgment, or she kind of went a little like, maybe, you know, try to say like, right, she went a little crazy at the time because of Jan and you know. So I'm think there's legal loopholes and ways around it, at the very least, not get her found innocent, but at the very least like reduce what they might be trying to charge her with. So we'll see in the future potentially whether that becomes a thing or not. But while all this is happening, well, I skipped over to, but there was a scene between Maggie and Mickey where she's pissed at him. It's like, how could you confront a killer? He's like, I didn't, Maggie. I thought my driver was in trouble. Like, he was pulled into a lie. So, and Izzy had no idea what was going on because she was off grid a little bit, turned her phone off because she was at a meeting. And it's like, whoa, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, everything's good. Just you be careful, you hang in there, because it seems like, because she actually showed up at a meeting and she was doing good. Especially because, like, the last time we saw Izzy last episode was her ex had texted her, so she was kind of like back in that lane again, but just like luckily she pulled through it and went to a meeting. But so everything kind of worked out on that front. But him and Maggie kind of rekindle everything, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. And all it took was you nearly dying. But Maggie has said, you have a family. He's like, wait, you said I have a family. He's like, I want to make this work, and so does she. So it's like, right, let's have Sunday dinner like we used to. So, and they do, and there's a part of me in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's not going to work out, is it? Like, you hope it will. Jumping around a little bit, I didn't expect things to there be fallout this quickly. I thought maybe they get back together, things be good, but then they kind of hit a rough patch. Didn't expect it in the same episode. They're dipping their toes into getting back together. Haley's happy about it, seeing them at dinner together, Sunday dinner together, even like, no, because that wasn't Sunday dinner, that was that Sunday? There was Sunday dinner was going to be a different thing, but that was just maybe like a week had passed and it was the next Sunday dinner. Whatever the case may be, they were together having lunch or whatever, and Haley was just giving them time alone. So she was happy to have her parents back together, but she even admits later on she didn't think it was going to fully work out. She hoped it would, but she figured this sequel wasn't going to be kind of a happy ending, and sadly it isn't. But it seemed like they were moving in the right direction, but conflicting interests ended up playing a big role in this, because Tanya's testimony couldn't be used against Soto because it was so messed up. So it's up to Langford. He had to be the one, because they can't let Tanya testify, because the whole deal was baked into her agreement that she wouldn't have to testify. So I was like, right, it seemed like everything was kosher, but like I figured there was going to be the issues. I thought everything was resolved, then he got enough of the confession on tape. So Langford heard it. So his testimony about the confession that he heard, that was going to be like their smoking gun against Soto. At the same time this is all happening, Mickey is balancing two different things. One, trying to find out the person that was behind this whole Trevor situation, the one that was behind killing Jerry, but he's also trying to find out the truth about the whole situation with Jesus, because Lorna actually met with Glory Days, and we learned a little bit about Lorna. We found out why she quit, and now it makes sense why when she ran into that dude, I'm blanking on his name now, the guy that saw her at the courthouse, he's like, hey, Lorna, you were at the top of the class, like, I don't know why, and she got a little fidgety afterwards. Now we know why. She was really good in the class, she really enjoyed it, it was hard work, but she loved it, but then her teacher made a move on her, and that's kind of why. We didn't get the full story, because Glory Days was cutting her off, like, oh, I get it, you got out of there, and now you started doubting yourself because of it. So it's like, right, don't try and compare your situation to mine, like, we are not the same. But for Lorna, it's just like, right, that person was your friend, right? The one that Jesus is accused of murdering. I think her name was Martha. It's like, she was your friend, right? So do this for her, like, to get, make sure that the right person doesn't go to jail. And we end up finding out the truth about why, because I was like, well, then why did you leave, Glory Days? Turns out a vice cop, Linda Perez, confronted her. Was like, yeah, get out of town. It's like, so dirty cops are involved in this. Interesting. And it turns out, because Mickey went to Griggs about this, and Griggs was like, because they found out that Linda, I was about to call her Laura. Linda had gotten overshadowed when it came to like promotions. She was kind of stuck in Vice for like 3 years or something like that. And she kept getting like overshadowed and not getting the promotions. So there's talks about like her supervisor, Detective Winters, being the one that greased the wheels if she was able to get this investigation shut down. So the question then becomes like, well, why is that? And trying to justify it by being like, well, you do this, we'll help you out. But it's like, yeah, Jesus, he's dead to rights. He's the bad guy. We got him. Like, that's all there is to it. We don't find out later on if there was more to that. Like, why were you extra? There might be some extra motivation we'll potentially find out about in the future, maybe, that would lead to why that happens. Because initially, I love it. Because the moment Langford is there, I was like, that's weird. At first, I was like, jumping ahead a little bit, I was like, I had an inkling it was going to land at Langford's feet. Because we were talking about kind of a corrupt cop, and I got the feeling, because that guy already skates the lines already, and you're just kind of like, I don't know, some of the stuff he does, the way he handles things is kind of icky, and I'm like, I don't know. In his mind, it's like, right, it's about catching the bad guy. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if he legitimately believed Jesus did it, but it's like, right, then why try and get someone to get rid of someone who could prove that it wasn't him. But to be fair, she's Gloria's a lady of the night. And it's like, right, you can't trust her. Her testimony could have been paid off. Like, that's, maybe in his mind, it's like, right, I know Jesus did it. Or, once again, maybe he's got his own, I don't know. Like, he thought he was doing the right thing, cutting some corners, doing this, threatening a witness. I don't know, whatever the case may be, but I love that twist where it's like, I had that feeling, but I wasn't sure, but I just thought it was weird because I'm like, why the hell are you in a courtroom here? That seemed odd. So, Linda couldn't testify because she was saying at first, it's like, oh, I wasn't there. Oh, I was camping with my husband and my son. And then it's like, cool, here's surveillance footage. I didn't know what I needed to be looking for. Now I do. And they find Linda in the elevator. It's like, cool, you said you were camping and also you were in this building. So what were you doing? Her lawyer's immediately like, my client, I need to confer with her and I'm begging her to plead the fifth here. So, and I love the judge being like, well, we're going to get to the fucking bottom of this. And he's talking to the stenographer. I always butcher that. And he's like, could you clean that up a little bit? I love that. Isn't that the actor who played the president in the X-Men movies? What was it, 1 and 2? Or was he just in the first one? I think he was only in the first one. I think that's the same actor. You've seen him in so many different things. God, kind of hard to believe that was like 22 years ago. Because that first X-Men movie came out like 2000, didn't it? It's like, Jesus, that seems so long ago, yet also not that long ago. Either way, I think that's the same actor, but I could be mistaken. I swear I've seen him in something fairly recently. That might be, maybe I'm wrong. Either way. But Linda's like, right, now that she conferred with her lawyer, struck a deal, turns out the one who actually did it was Langford. But Mickey, like, he talked to Griggs because he thought everything was going to lead to Winters and he didn't realize it was going to lead to Langford. But Griggs did the investigating. Then immediately he ran over and talked to, he's like, oh, you should probably take a deal with the whole Soto thing. And she's like, what? No, like, I'm not going to. And he didn't talk, like, I figured for legal reasons he couldn't necessarily talk about it. But I'm like, what's going on here? I was like, it had to be about Langford, the reason why Mickey was telling her to take the deal. Like, you might not get him as, like, heavy as you want to, but at the very least, take the deal when they offer it. And so because of that, she got blindsided by the Langford thing, and it kind of imploded her case against Soto. And now it's a situation of, she's mad at Mickey because it's like, right, you could have at least we could have found another way. But he's like, my client comes first. Once again, Mickey never gave us the answer of, like, who are the most important, like, what was it? The 4 most important people in his life. It's Haley, Maggie, Lorna, and it's like, and Cisco was like, well, who's the 4th person? And I said at the time in the first episode, he never gave an answer to it. It's his client. Their needs come first and foremost. So he needed to get justice for Jesus because this was all Langford's fault, and so that whole situation. So, but now Maggie's like, oh, there you go again. You always put your client first. And he was like, really? what about you? And she's almost like, excuse me? He's like, be honest. Like, when have you ever put me first? Like, your ambitions of what you want. She's like, oh, you want me to apologize for that? He's like, no, but I want you to be honest. If you were in my shoes, would things be any different? And she's just kind of like, right, I guess we can't work this out. Maybe someday we can, but not today. Like, the fact is, we will always clash. Other lawyers might be able to leave it at the office, but neither one of us can. Like, our jobs are too ingrained in who we are. They're too much of a part of us to ever shut that off. And it's like, maybe Mickey could have found another way. Maybe he could have to be fair, he was trying to tell, but it's like, once again, it's that thing of like, she had some trust issues when it came to him. And even she's like, but you couldn't trust me to tell, if you had told me the truth, we could have potentially found another way around this. Like, it still would have imploded her case because Langford would have had to go take the fall. But then she probably would have said like, right, look, I don't know like what that, because even if they had used Langford's testimony then and he got dismissed later on, like, oh, like all the Jesus stuff came up and he ended up taking the fall, or at least, it sullied his name. I don't know if, I think that would have all poisoned it, and Soto's defense lawyer would have been like, oh, now we can strike that. So he would have been bad off for a little bit, but it would have all like worked out for Soto in the end because of that. So it kind of implodes everything between Mickey and Maggie. And even Haley's like, was it really all worth it? And Mickey talks about the week after Jesus was, sentenced, like he had his accident. He's like, I don't know if it was connected or not, but at the very least, this is something I had to make right. So Haley can understand, because it was that conversation that she had previously, understanding her dad doing what he does, and knowing like, right, you were trying to get an innocent person off, and this was about taking down that Cobb is just, yeah, the issues are what they are, but you are trying to do the right thing, and she can be proud of her dad for that he drew, like, doing everything he could, even though it puts him and her mom at odds, he was doing everything he could to get an innocent man out of jail. And now also knowing how this was connected to his accident potentially too, that it was extra motivation of like, I had to do the right thing. So I don't think they clarify how much time you do. They kind of give you, I guess, some hint of like, yeah, there's been a bit of a time skip. Maggie's now working with Bob, even though Mickey was like, don't do that. Janelle's bad. Like, Janelle's worse, sure, but Bob is just as bad. But it turns out, yeah, despite everything, despite the weaker case they have, just like Janelle, Bob wants her to just, it's like, oh, the case is dead. Like, she was still trying but couldn't. And he's like, right, drop this. And he's even kind of shifting her to a different job. And she's like, really? Like, I guess my loyalty meant nothing. It's like, right, both you and Janelle are both snakes. And I think this will eventually lead to Maggie deciding that she's going to go for, like, because I think this is signifying, like, right, she chose his side and he ended up winning in the end. But now it's like, right, it was probably too late in the race to throw her hat in the ring, but I think probably with the next election or whatever, she will probably run for DA herself. She kind of didn't want to do that. I think Mickey has suggested she should throw her hat in the ring when it comes to that, but she decided not to. Once again, it's too late in this particular race, I think, for that to have been a viable option, but in the future it could be. But I'm curious to see what this means for Maggie going forward, where she's going to, because basically she's gone out of a, well, she's not completely out of a job. She's being moved to a different job, and it's not the same cases that she was working before. It's like, oh, but these are high profile cases, yada yada yada. It's just like, right, you and Janelle are the same, because the reason Bob's like, right, I'm supposed to be like cracking down on the corruption of cops, and how is this going to look if we use Langford's testimony, even still using again the Soto thing. It's like, right, just it's all part of the political game. So, but before she kind of quote unquote lost her job, I mean, I love that she told Bob, just get the fuck out of my office while it's still mine. He's like, okay, and clears the story. He's like, yeah, you did a scumbag thing, but she calls in a favor, and basically, what was it, the U.S. Marshals? She has a friend who's, was she a district attorney? Like, she's an attorney or a prosecutor or something like that. She's with the U.S. Marshals, and they arrest Soto for human trafficking and stuff like that. And she's like, right, this won't stick either. because this case was about getting Soto, because they were trying to build a case against Soto initially, but with her client David's death, like they couldn't go forward with that, and now they're trying to get him on David's death. It's like, okay, I can't do that, but we still have the whole because they were dropping the case, and even Soto was going to ask for an apology, and the judge was like, yeah, shut up, you're not getting that. But other than that, them arresting him for the trafficking, it's like, right, they have deep pockets and they have deep time to like keep investigating you. And she's like, unlike the DAs, I'm not going anywhere. So she's still going to be invested in the Soto thing. So we could definitely see that end up continuing going forward. But it's going to be interesting to see potentially where Maggie's story ends up going forward from here. And also, will her and Mickey be in a better place or not after everything? But the real twist to me was finding out the person behind Jerry's murder and everything. That judge, I did not see that coming. It never even crossed my mind for it to be her. But when Mickey lays it out, you're like, actually, it makes a lot of sense. It's funny and ironic. The person who ended up giving you all of Jerry's cases, and she probably she made sure to be the one to do all that for a particular reason, because she was also getting checkups on you from time to time, and it's probably like trying to check and see the progress of everything without getting too. I don't know how deep in the minutia of those cases, especially Trevor's case, did she really get into it, but I love the reveal of like, no, she was the one behind everything. It's like, right, your husband, turns out it was her and her husband that were in this together. Basically, I love Mickey's explanation of like, whoever set up this juror situation had to be someone that was familiar enough with the jury process. Yes, there's other people who could do that, but it had to be someone who'd be able to cut it off at the process of like being able to have access to it, but also to to be the one to have a defense husband who tells you like how you could make sure that juror number 7, McSweeney, would be in a situation, be the type of juror that the prosecutor wouldn't get rid of, but also a defense attorney wouldn't look at and bat an eye, and they both keep him, you know. But then it's also that it turns out that McSweeney was one of her husband's clients on top of all of that. But also what gave her away was, it's like, right, McSweeney disappeared after I pulled my trick and made Judge Stanton aware of him. And it's like, right, how would he have known that I tipped the judge off about him? How would he even know about the tip-off unless, because then it's like, right, Judge Stanton gave me the answer. He said, I conferred with my other colleagues, which he was like, that includes you, Judge, because you're his boss. I was like, oh, this is so good. I was like, that's so interesting. Because we never found out what her actual... They never explained like what she was getting out of all of this. Whether she was, but she's the one responsible for killing Jerry. But I guess whatever was going to be made, it's like, right, we're going to help out Trevor, because, you know, who cares, when the fix is in, we'll benefit from this. And I don't know whether they were going to buy stocks or what. Like I said, they never really explained her motivation for helping out. Maybe it was there and I missed it. I don't think they said anything, but she was threatening, it's like, oh, I could take it all away from you. But he's like, no, you're going to need a lawyer, because after Cisco did the digging and find out about those connections, the FBI had started investigating and now working with the LAPD. A particular cop I know, you're going to be going away. You're going to need a lawyer. He's like, yeah, but I'm all booked up. So it's like, yeah. And once again, I love that him and Griggs were at odds, but they came to work together. So I could definitely see that relationship develop more in the future as well. Because he had also thrown out, how did McSweeney know to use Izzy as bait to draw me out? You know, it's because you knew about that, because you used a private investigator to investigate me. Once again, it's like, it's funny that like she's the one that gave him all these cases, but that was all for the purpose because she needed some, right, Jerry wouldn't step in line. I wonder, did she already know that she must have already known Jerry had set that up so that if he died, it's like, right, well, we don't need you anymore. The moment she found out about Mickey being the one that takes over everything, she probably immediately was like, right, he needs this more than very much like Trevor being like, oh, I know you need this more than just as much as I do. She probably thought the same thing of like, all right, let's pop Jerry, and then the moment Mickey takes over, he can fill that void and we can get him to fall in line. Because I guess they weren't kind of they expected him to fall in line. They were probably hoping, but he didn't, so that's why they tried to kill him and everything, so. I wonder what they're going to try and make his death look like suicide, because if they murdered him, it'd be too much. It's like, right, there's Jerry's death, and now now it's like, oh, Mickey's going to die too. So I guess he was going to drag Mickey off the edge and make it seem like Mickey jumped or something. Because why not? Wouldn't it have been easier just to pop him? But it's like, right, shooting him like that would have drawn too much attention, I guess. So they probably just want to make it like, right, because of his history, they could probably just skate away, be like, oh, he was in a downward spiral. Maybe they're going to make him overdose and then fling him off the cliff. But it looked like he was throwing him towards the cliff, so I'm assuming he was going to make it seem like an accident or suicide or whatever. But I thought that, like I said, I think that was an interesting twist. Like, the judge wasn't even on my radar. It wouldn't even have crossed my mind to think it was her, so. And I did like the whole thing of like, right, Mickey and Izzy talking, because you're like, right, when is this happening? You assumed it was in the future, but it's like, right, it's them driving all the way to get to check on Jesus because he's getting released after everything. And Izzy's like, right, I should take the bar after this, like all the stuff that you taught me. But Mickey's like, no, everything he learned, he kind of picked up from his. I wonder, like, he didn't actually learn in all school. It was all the stuff he kind of picked up from his dad or something like that. Or maybe just stuff he picked up along the way. Either way, I just thought that was interesting. Some other story elements. Obviously, you had Cisco finding out, looking into it. The whole Casey situation kept bothering him. And he sees that, like, there was no charges. It was pro bono. Because it did seem like, I think if I remember correctly, there was a PB behind it. I was like, what was that? Yeah, and it's like pro bono probably makes the most sense. But Cisco knew something was up. He's known something's been up for a while. And so he ends up confronting Teddy about it because he realizes, like, right, the case against him got dropped, and now he's back to making meth for you. And he knows that's going to weigh on Mickey, but right, Mickey made a deal that as long as Cisco was allowed to walk away, he'd probably continue doing whatever they needed him to do. And Cisco's like, right, Mickey's deal with you is done. I'm not my debts are mine to pay, no one else. And so it's like, cool. So Teddy's like, right, we do have some work for you. We don't know what that is, but obviously Cisco isn't going to tell Lorna nor Mickey, and this might end up in a situation where one, if not the other, is going to have to end up defending him. It depends on where Lorna is in school and everything like that, and I don't know where he's becoming a lawyer. It's probably going to end up being Mickey having to defend him against whatever it is. That it's probably going to be something small that ends up spiraling out that Mickey's probably going to have to defend him in the future for. And once again, he's not going to tell Lorna, and that's probably going to put a little hiccup in the whole engagement thing. So once again, it's just him trying to make this right because he doesn't want Mickey getting dragged into whatever that biker gang's like nonsense is, and he doesn't want, because eventually like Lorna would get tied up in that too. So he's trying to protect the people he cares about because he doesn't want someone as good as Mickey getting mixed up with all of this as well. So he's probably thinking like, right, I do this, I get from under their foot. Like me, Mickey, and Lorna are done with them. So never have any connections or ties to them ever again. So. And then we had the situation where at the very end, Mickey is at the water. Because it's very symbolic of it all coming full circle. Obviously, his accident was after the whole Jesus thing. After getting Jesus freed, even them hugging it out in the end. Everything working out. The true killer still being out there. But Mickey being on his board, like going out into the water, it's just like, right, that guilt and everything, it's finally kind of alleviated to some extent, you know, and trying to, you know, once again, he had said it to Griggs about like the thousands that go to jail, but it's like that one innocent. As long 1,000 guilty can go to jail, but it's that one innocent that really weighs with you, like his dad told him all those years ago. So kind of being cleared, like, yeah, there's still some hiccups and complications, but this was something that's been gnawing at him, something that he had buried for so long is finally bubbled to the surface. That finally bubbled to the surface after all this time, and now he's finally clear of it. So, but at the very end, we see that the killer with the tattoo that Glory Days had mentioned, she is going to be protected. I mean, there's always a possibility the killer would come after her again because she does know what he looks like, but she definitely remembers the tattoo on his arm. But we see that he's watching Mickey, so Mickey's going to be an issue. Once again, does Langford and that person have some connection? And now it's like, okay, you've kind of steered the pot. Like, there might be something more at play here, that this particular killer might be someone of significance. Because I was almost wondering, like, there was a part of me that was almost wondering at first, before the whole Langford thing got revealed, I was like, is he there in court? Are we going to find out that he's actually the killer? But, like, I think Glory Days would have said something then and there, but just so he wouldn't get away with what he did. But I think the killer's going to end up being someone of pretty big significance, and he's probably going to be someone that Mickey crosses paths with. He is blonde from what we can tell, but that doesn't mean in the future might throw a few blonde red herrings in your way. Or at the very least, maybe in the future he dyes his hair a different color now that people potentially might be looking for him, or covering up his tattoo. We have no idea. But also we're going to have to be on the lookout for lefties, because the person who did it was with their left hand, right? I think I could be mistaken. But once again, nice way to end the season, wrap everything up, but also set up the future. At the time of me recording this, which it is June 11th, Netflix has not renewed The Lincoln Lawyer for a second season yet, but just based on what I've seen, everyone's kind of feeling like it might be super likely, because the show has continued to be, at least here in the U.S., on the more popular, like on the what's popular, or what's trending. So it seems like people are still watching it, so it seems pretty popular. So people are at least leaning more towards, like, yeah, it seems highly likely. But yeah, all the stuff I brought up, I'd be really interested to see the continuation of all that in season 2. I'm assuming they'd kind of do very much like, once again, this is based on a Michael Connelly novels, very much like Bosch, so I expect the format to be similar in the regard of it's going to be just like the Trevor Elliott thing was an overarching case. I'm assuming the next thing would be that as well. Plus, maybe there'll be an overarching case, plus balancing out the whole situation with the real killer with the tattoo, the one that who killed Martha, that Jesus took the fall for. That storyline, once again, everything between Cisco and his old gang, Lorna as a lawyer, and Mickey and just his whole family situation with Maggie and Haley, and Maggie in general, where her story takes us. Whether we're going to continue any further with the whole Langford thing, like whether we deal with any more of that and Soto in season 2. A lot of plot threads you could definitely see them expand upon more. They might not be like main through lines, but maybe there'll be background storylines, other cases that Mickey might work on, like Izzy's, which obviously the continuation of Izzy's story too, where things kind of stand for her, like her and Mickey and their circumstances as addicts, but also like Terrell and Emil, like those, they ended up obviously playing in the overarching story, but I'm sure like something similar will happen with like other future cases he ends up taking as well. So, but like I said, fingers crossed. It seems likely, but I'm still likely doesn't always mean that's a guarantee, but I'm hopeful for season 2, because I'd love to see where this would all go from here. I don't know how many books are in the series. I know there's a crap ton of Bosch books, so there's a lot they could pull from. So just Googling it really quickly, there are 6 main books. I don't know if that's supposed to mean like there might be like short stories or one-offs. I was looking at it. It's interesting. A lot of those, some of those book titles are episode titles, like The Brass Verdicts. So I thought that was interesting, because that was the name of this episode. But they also said like The Gods of Guilt, which is the name he kind of gives to the jury. So the episode in particular wasn't. I don't think any of the episodes this season was named that, but just obviously like some of that terminology. And I think even I think the most recent book was 2020, based on what I was looking at really quickly. So the book series might not be done, or maybe it is. I don't know. Once again, it was a quick Googling. At the very least now, there are a total of 6 mainline books, so there's still story you can pull from. Once again, I'm assuming that this is all mainly taken from like the first book, or adapting the first book, but it might be pulling here and there from other things that I'm just not aware of. I'm not much of a book reader, but regardless, putting all that aside, This is really all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.